name is Dwayne Merritt.
And working with first responders. Could you tell us a little bit about
My background includes starting as a junior fireman at the age of 16. I now have 34 years continuous service in emergency response, including EMS, fire department, and law enforcement, and now for the last 10 years as an emergency manager for different agencies.
So as the emergency manager, what does your work entail? What is the typical type of services that you provide?
My role as emergency manager for the county is to develop plans and procedures on how the county would respond to any natural or man-made disaster, such as the forest fires, the floodings that we've recently had, and to coordinate the response for those incidents. I coordinate between fire, EMS, law enforcement. Red Cross, Salvation Army, religious groups that offer, like Baptist Relief, that does disaster management as part of their response capabilities.
What the impact of stress has on the lives of first responders? What kind of stress do they have to deal with?
In the early days, there's all kinds of stress that we deal with. EMS, the loss of a patient. You have to deal with the families that you respond to their location, and they could have just lost their home. They could have lost a loved one. There's all kinds of devastation if the flooding, if their home is flooded. Then the responders, a lot of times we respond into an incident that where we have fatals. The people are already deceased when we get to the scene. And there's a stress level there too, because you're geared up to assist and there's nothing to do, so you have that high adrenaline flow that adds to that situation where you need something to do but there's nothing to do. The state has what we call critical incident stress debriefings, and the debriefing team is out of Santa Fe, and it's made up of responders. It's made out of I believe Carl Russell with the Baptist Men is also part of that team. So it's made up a group of religious and responders that can come in. We prefer 24 hours after an incident. And the reason we prefer to do it after the incident is a lot of the emotions haven't really come to light yet within yourself. And so it gives you more time for these things to develop. I guess the emotional needs a time to develop and to start sorting these things out. So that's primarily the purpose. Is you come in and you talk with peers that have been there and did that, and it's more open, and just talk out what you're feeling, and to realize that these feelings are normal and you can express those feelings. You know, it's amazing that when I first started in the service in emergency response, there was nothing there. Basically, and we've discussed this, you were just told to suck it up, and that was part of the job. And in the early days, and even today, we still have responders that have deep emotional problems with things that have happened in the past. I can remember certain incidents that stick out in my mind, and you think, well, this was a bad situation, and yeah, you'd remember that. But it seems like it is the bad things, the terrible calls that you remember most. And you begin to realize, well, why am I remembering only that? Why am I not remembering the good things? And so slowly you kind of develop, or I have, that, you know, maybe I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. But to deal with in today's situation, we really don't have anything that is on scene type of help, if you will, for those responders, especially in large incidents where you have to go day after day. I was fortunate enough to get to go to Florida to assist with the hurricanes. And you would be working side by side with people from that area. And you would tell them, why don't you take off a few hours and go home? You've been here a week now. And they would tell you, I don't have a home to go to. It was, destroyed by the hurricane. And you got to see where the highlight of somebody's day was when they got their water and power back on. And those were just little highlights of the situation. But there was nothing, we didn't provide nothing for those people or anything for those people to deal with that emotion at the time.
And they themselves were victims of the
And they were
disaster.
victims sitting there helping the rest of the citizens of that county. So we need something that we can do on a large scale incident to help relieve that stress and to be able to discuss our feelings with somebody.
Program like that.
We have the ability, and we always concentrate in law enforcement and fire of building up the physical body. But we don't really have anything out there for the emotional side. And yes, I think we do need to develop something that would help prepare us emotionally. The way I dealt with it when I first began as an EMT was, somebody told me, when the pager goes off or when the alarm comes in for a motor vehicle accident, imagine the worst thing that you can imagine. And your imagination was always worse than what the scene was. So when you got there, you kind of relaxed a little bit and were able to perform your duty. But we don't really, like I said, have anything in place for that day-to-day preparation of how to deal with our emotions and what we see at those scenes. I've heard a little bit about the yoga and meditation and things like that. The ability to work through with breathing and exercises, if you will, as a term, to assist those people, I think would be of great benefit to those responders.
Are people using that?
They're using it, but a lot of times they misuse it, and they misuse it by not waiting that time frame. So a lot of the things, they bring them in right after the incident, like the next day or something. And if they could have waited a couple of days to let some of these emotions come forward, if you will, then it would be, I think, a lot better utilized.
You feel they're just getting into it too soon, they're not allowing that
They're not
processing
allowing
to-
that process to develop, to actually see what's taken place within themselves, if you will. So they're getting that severe accident where they have fatalities, and they're calling for the team right away. And the team comes in, it does their job, but I think they need to wait that time period, even 48 hours, to allow those emotions to develop and realize that there's really something going on.
The severity of their shock and trauma
I don't
they've
think
experienced.
abuse is the right word. I think it's trying to get their people help as quick as they can to diffuse whatever is going on within themselves. But it's done too quickly. Relay that calmness, if you will, to the other responders by the way we give orders over the radio, by the way we talk to people. And if, as an incident commander, if I'm very hyper and excited, that's going to be conferred down to the workers, and they're going to address that. If I'm cool, calm, and collected, then that is also going to go down the leash, if you will. As an instructor for critical incident management for the Department of Public Safety, we have a section in there about stress and how we manage stress. And part of the way that we look at it is in the canine police corps or search dogs, when they're on a leash, they can actually sense the handler's emotions. So we call it down the leash. If the handler is excited and his adrenaline's really going and he's really eager, then the dog is that same way. If the trainer is very collected and calm, then the dog will be very collected and calm. And we try to put that into perspective on response. If I have an incident commander, if I'm an incident commander, and I'm shouting orders over the radio at the top of my voice and I'm real hyper, then everybody else around me gets hyper. If I'm cool, calm, and collected, and I'm issuing orders in a clear, concise manner, then everybody else reacts that same way. This must not be as bad as what we imagine, because, you know, the commander seems to be relaxed, so we're okay, and we kind of pass that down by our own actions. We have the course itself has curriculum in it, and usually what we use is life experiences, things that I've come across on scenes that were emotional. I teach with state police officers, or I did at the time, that would relay things that were critical in nature to them and things that affected their emotions. And by that, you could notice in the class, if they have experience, they kind of start nodding their head going, yeah, we've had something like that. So it's very emotional a lot of times. But the neat thing about it is that it gives us a chance to once again voice that particular incident. So it allows us to deal with it a little bit more each time we teach that course.
Do people experience a release somewhat from the trauma and the tensions that they're moving?
I think what happens is they realize that we're all in this, that we all have things that get to us, if you will, that bother us, and that they can look at people up there with, you know, I taught with state police officers at 20, 25-year careers, and they look at these as younger officers looking at these more experienced guys, and they realize it's okay now to talk about this stuff and not hold it in. And like I say, you would see them kind of nodding, and then at break they would say, you know, I had something like that happen to me, and this is what it was. So it gives them a chance to really start at a classroom level, just one-on-one with the instructor about, this is what happened to me. So it gives them a chance to kind of open up a little bit and realize that that's okay. Yeah, a lot of the old school was that we had to hold it in. We really didn't have a relief. You didn't want to take it home because you don't want your significant other to really know what you're going through in the field. And unless they're there, they can't understand those emotions. And so your only alternative was a group of the team would get together and talk about it among themselves. Not really anything formal, just talking it out. One of the things that just came to mind is that we always, if you hear somebody on the radio that's very excited or something like that, we always tell them, take a deep breath and relax. So I think the information is there. We just need to follow through with it and learn how to do that correctly to prevent a lot of the stress from the incident itself. I've spoke with several of my counterparts in emergency management, some of the fire chiefs that I know, and they all think that yoga and the meditation is something to help prevent the stress prior to the incident would be wonderful. One of the things that we might look at is that at the debriefing, when the team comes in, we're talking about the incident. Maybe one idea would to put the breathing and meditation aspect, incorporate that into the debriefing. And it would serve a couple of purposes. It would certainly calming effect on it, because it's going to be a very emotional session when you come in and you start talking about the things that are going on and that are bothering you. So maybe to incorporate that yoga, breathing, meditation into the debrief would be something that we would like to look at, or you would like to look at and incorporate into that. Mm-hmm. And then we could have the people would have that ability, the responders would have the ability to initially have the training from yoga and meditation and breathing. And then as they go through the debrief, they incorporate that into the session and release the tension right then for that particular incident. I think just the emotion of a first responder in dealing with death on the scene, with dealing with overwhelming odds, plays a real important factor. I know from my situations that I remember is I had a 10-year-old get hit in the head with a golf club, and I did CPR all the way to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they pronounced him dead. And I was very upset that they didn't try to work on this kid more, that the doctor, to me, just didn't seem like that was worthwhile. But I had thought I'd done my best, and my best wasn't good enough. And that was just hard to accept, because when you're a new EMT, you know, they teach you everything you need to know to save a life. And in the early days, they failed to tell you that not everyone was savable. So you had to deal with that. And I've dealt with things where I've pulled a 2-year-old out of a dumpster from an abuse case. And that was in the days that you were told to hold it in, and you really couldn't talk to anybody about it. Now, you know, there's times that when we teach critical incident management, we would do that stress part, we would go to lunch, and we would start talking again. So it's kind of a self-help, you know, to bring it up in training and everything. And you can tell that it's still, you know, emotional to me to talk about some of those things. And I think responders get the same thing, that 99% of our calls are routine, if you will. We go out, we do what we need to do, and everything's fine. Then we get those calls that we can't do what we need to do. And I think that's very emotional. I think responders need to know or have the ability to follow up on their patients. You know, or if I go to a structure fire and somebody's burnt out, I think we need to know that, hey, the Red Cross came in and these people are taken care of. Yeah, they lost everything they had, but they're okay. And I think that's part of the process. Is I find this true in dispatchers. Dispatchers take the call for a sick child. The medics go out, they transport to the hospital, but they never get feedback to say, did that kid make it? Or did the emergency medical dispatch they do over the radio or over the telephone, did that make a difference? And I think we all need that ability to follow up and find out. We need that reassurance from the physician or from the medics or from whoever, saying, you know, if this person had been at the hospital, we couldn't have saved him. And so it makes a difference to us psychologically to know what's going on. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think anything that we can do for responders, whether it be yoga or, I mean, unfortunately in the old days we called it choir practice. And that was when everybody got together after this serious call and they went out and they drank and they forgot that way. And fortunately we don't have that many choir practices anymore. So, but we do need a good, healthy way to deal with stress, with the emotions of what we go through on a day-to-day basis, realizing that the only ones that truly understand are the ones that have been there. So, you know, I've had patients die in my arms, you know, that you just couldn't do anything for. And unless you've been there, you know, don't say, well, I understand where you're coming from, because they can't.